welcome to the Legal Talk Show, proudly brought to you by Say What, with support from the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe. I'm your host, Panashe Batamoto, but as usual, you can call me the Dynamite. And today here in the studio of choice, we'll be discussing on issues surrounding female genital mutilation. And joining me are two beautiful ladies whom I'm going to give the opportunity to introduce themselves, starting with you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bongile Mauye. I'm a commissioner with the Zimbabwe Gender Commission.
Okay, and you?
All right, thank you, Panashe. My name is Chida Mawere, and I'm a peer educator.
All right, thank you so much for joining us today on the Legal Talk Show.
Thank you.
All right, so maybe you can agree with me that over the recent years, there's been a decline of cases concerning female genital mutilation. But because, according to another United Nations report, whilst we're looking on the cases surrounding COVID-19, it is said that we're most likely to go back in scale containing the number of cases that we have on female genital mutilation. So I'd like to understand, for the benefit of our viewers as well, what is female genital mutilation?
Okay, perhaps female genital mutilation is also called female genital cutting.
Okay.
So it is the modification of the genitalia, either by cutting or by stitching.
Okay.
So that's my understanding of female genital mutilation.
Okay, so maybe from the benefit of our audience, if we can put it in vernacular, when we are saying female genital mutilation.
Ndinofunga kuti kuchecheudza munhukadzi panhengo yake, kubvisa zvinotariswa kunge kuti munhu anogona kungeita murume. Tingangoti pane nhengo yemunhukadzi yakaita kunge yakada kufanana neyechirume, saka iyoyo inobviswa dzimwe nguva. Asi vamwe vanotosona, kutosona chaiko chaiko kuti pasare pasina kaburi kanosara kari kaya kekungoendesa kuchimbuzi.
Oh, okay. And thank you so much for that. Maybe to you, Chido, if you can maybe in your own words, what you think is female genital mutilation?
Thank you, Panashe. I think I can concur with the commissioner. The easiest way we can say it is kuchecheudzwa kwevanhukadzi. I think vanhu vagara vane knowledge on what kuchecheudzwa is, and it's mainly known kuvarume, but then is zvango kuvakadzi.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And back to you, Commissioner. I would want to understand, you're coming from the Gender Commission. What is your position in terms of female genital mutilation in our country, Zimbabwe?
Thank you, Panashe. As a commission, we are actually a constitutional commission, and we stand for the protection of the rights of both men and women, but especially for women, because we've seen that their rights in certain cases, they are actually jeopardized because of some practices. So our position as a commission is that which is in the Constitution, that there should be bodily autonomy and there should be equality between the sexes. Okay. But now, going back to the issue of female genital mutilation, as a commission, we've done just a little bit of research, and we have discovered that there are certain communities within our country, and there is research which has been done, which show that in the Shangani area, or the Shangani people who are in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, and South Africa, they practice to some extent female genital mutilation. But to a large extent, in Zimbabwe, we have very little in terms of female genital mutilation. But what we have is called labial elongation, which is like an extension of the labia. This is more widespread. But I just want to put a footnote that we actually need a proper research for us to know the actual extent of female genital mutilation in Zimbabwe.
Okay, so maybe just to rephrase what you were saying, it seems as if in Zimbabwe we are saying that we don't have more cases concerning female genital mutilation. But I want to understand from the research that you did concerning the number of cases that we have in Zimbabwe, did you really have more like an open discussion with the girls? Because I actually believe it's a violation, a gross violation of human rights, especially for a girl child. So did you sit down to discuss with some of these girls that are being involved in such a hideous act, to discuss, is it really affecting them? What do they think about the process?
Let me just correct that. The research that was done actually is an academic research, which was done by a person called Mutanda and other authors. They actually did the research in the Shangaan area, and they were talking to the women and girls. And indeed, it is a violation of girls' rights and women's rights. But what I'm saying is that for us to really know the extent, because remember we are looking towards 2030, so that we can actually check on the progress, we need a specific study to be done, perhaps beyond those communities that I've talked about, so that we can actually know the extent of the problem, so we can actually put perhaps a figure to it. So that has not yet been done, besides that research which was done in 2016. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And to you, Chido, you're a young person. I would want to understand what this practice really means to you, especially being a girl child.
Violation of my rights. End of story. Because in most researches, be it it's in Zimbabwe or outside Zimbabwe, you'd find out there's no medical reason why this is done. It's mostly cultural and societal. So it's not benefiting the girl in any way. Rather, it's infringing their rights and stopping them from then making necessary decisions in their lives that are sexual, of which I should have rights to my body. It should be an issue of, oh, we are removing these because we feel like it, when there's no benefit to me at the end of the day as a young person. I don't want to grow up resenting my body. When I look at my parts, I'm constantly reminded, I don't have this. It was removed. What was the reason? What was the reason? Cultural reasons, societal reasons. At the end of the day, I resent myself even because I was too young to even choose. I don't want this, or I don't need this. So for me, it just spells violation of my rights as a young person. That's it.
Okay, and I'm glad that you raised a very important and critical point in terms of the medical side. So I was going through my research, and medically there are no benefits to female genital mutilation.
Yes.
And they actually disadvantage the girl child more because they are prone to so many diseases because of that. So I'd like to understand, maybe not from a gender commission point of view, but from your own personal lenses, do you really think that this act is relevant in this day and age?
Well, I don't think it is relevant even then. I don't think it was just a matter of, I think it's a belief system. People have so many myths and so many ideas about female sexuality. So it's around controlling female sexuality, really. Because how do you stitch somebody up? And how do you cut something? I know boys were also cut because of male circumcision. That was done as well. But I don't think it is, even then, was a good practice. And now it's even worse now that we are more exposed to more knowledge. So I don't think it is a useful practice at all.
All right. And thank you so much for that. I feel it is very important that we need to engage different people so that we really discuss about female genital mutilation, because most people don't even know what it is, where it came from, and what is really happening in terms of female genital mutilation. And yes, viewers, you're watching the Legal Talk Show, proudly brought to you by Say What, with support from the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe. Please do also make sure to get in touch with us on our toll-free number, which is 577 for psychosocial support and health-related issues. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back very soon. Hello viewers, and welcome back to the Legal Talk Show, proudly brought to you by Say What, with support from the Swedish Embassy. I'm your host, the Dynamite, and joining me in the studio of choice today are two beautiful ladies as we're discussing on the issues surrounding female genital mutilation. And Commissioner, I'd like to understand more in terms of this subject. Really, at times you hear people talking about it, and it seems like, let me say, maybe a taboo, or people just don't want to hear about it. So can you enlighten us more on this subject?
Okay, thank you, Panache. The issue of FGM is part of the issues of sex and sexuality.
Okay.
And in our culture and in most places in Africa, it is not easy. It is not in the public domain. It is a very private issue. So even when you're doing research, you find that not so many people will talk about their genitalia. They are talking about their sexuality, how they have sex, or what interests them. So this is where the issue of FGM comes in. So it is very, very private. So one would need a lot of, I think, methods, to be able to actually have people, say the actual truth. Because when people are talking, sometimes they can talk to please you, because you have a certain view and perspective. So there's that risk as well, especially during research. So I'm just saying it's not an easy topic because it's in the private domain. And most of us Zimbabweans in particular, we rarely talk about sex. And this is where the issue comes in.
Okay, interesting. And maybe to you, Chido, because you're a young girl, you're a young person, I'd want to understand maybe from your own point of view in terms of maybe somebody asking about what happened down there. Would you really feel like opening up to somebody in terms of your genitalia?
In a normal setup where I have no knowledge in terms of SRH and whatnot, I'm not associated with say what, I would not talk about it because my private part's my business. This is what's happening out there. And for the fact that even back at home, it's a taboo to talk about sex in general, what more diving deep into how are your parts, like are you this and that, I won't be free to talk about it. If anything, I'll feel violated. You want to know things about my parts, then what? But because we are now informed and we can sit down and have these conversations, I would talk about it. However, on a normal basis, many young people wouldn't talk about their private parts to anyone, even their own parents.
Okay. And it brings out a very important subject in terms of sexual reproductive health rights. What do you think should be done, especially in terms of young girls that are in the remote areas, because they're the ones who are being affected by this more? In terms of girls that are in the urban areas, they're more enlightened about these issues. What do you think should be done in terms of addressing SRH in remote areas?
I think we take the conversation where it's most affecting the people, because you can tell me about it. I live in Harare. In Harare, you might find close to none women who have that situation, who've gone through FGM. But if you then go to the areas that are affected, you'd find out, Kuti, for them it's normal, but the more you educate them, Kuti, okay, so this is not benefiting me. If anything, it's harming me. I can't give birth. At a young age, mwana hazvinzwisise izvozvo, because akakura achiudzwa kunzi mama akazvitwa nagogo akazvitwa nagogo wagogo akazvitwa, saka inini ndinofanira kutozvitwawo. But then if you then educate them kuti it's your right, you can choose to, you can choose not to. It shouldn't be infringed on you kuti ita because tati ita. So we need to take the conversation there. We need to have more researchers that direct us to where it's happening. And I think if we take that route, it would be very much beneficial. Yeah.
All right, interesting. And you mentioned something about culture. And sometimes culture is dynamic in space whereby people want it to be dynamic. And is this culture really justifiable? Maybe let's say that there are people that are resistant to change. So do you think that from the Gender Commission point of view, that this culture is justifiable in any sense because it's their culture? And people have different cultures that they conform to. And do you think it's really justifiable to say this is our culture and we really can't change it?
Well, from the Zimbabwe Gender Commission perspective, we are following the Constitution. And the Constitution says anything or any culture that infringes upon the rights of the people, they are not to be accepted, because our yardstick is the Constitution. So all those cultural activities that infringe on the rights of women and girls and men and boys, they're not acceptable. But when we go back to the discussion on culture, culture is dynamic, yes, but culture also needs certain people to initiate change. It needs change champions who will be able to educate people on where they are and what are the dangers within that particular belief system. And you must also know that culture normalizes certain things. So if this practice is normalized within a particular culture, you need somebody, perhaps sometimes within the culture or sometimes outside of that culture, to show that there is something wrong or something can be changed and adjusted. So I want to build on what Tashi just said, that I think our conversation should not be elitist. It should go where the people are. When we have identified that there are people in certain places, like from my research, I've seen that there are places in Zaka, there are places in Chikombezi, there are places in this place in Chipinge, I think it's called Manyene, something like that, where this practice is prevalent but is private. You then need to have that conversation there as part of awareness raising of sexual reproductive health and also other issues. So I think we need change champions who use research and who also use to understand, also using understanding of the culture. Because people become resistant to culture when they think you are imposing a particular culture. Then they become really resistant. So we need to understand where they're coming from and then have informed, so that they can actually have informed decisions. So that's what I would recommend.
Okay, and it brings me to another interesting point as well, in terms, because we're looking at this issue from a legal lens as well. So I'd like to understand, as the Gender Commission, what you have done over the past years in terms of eradicating this issue, and maybe you can say most of the things in vernacular in Shona, so that as the Gender Commission, to address this challenge.
Okay. Okay. Isuse Gender Commission zvatanga tichinyanyoita ndezve yatingati public education. Ndo zvatakatanga nazvo kuti kuma districts nekuma province tinoshanda nemamwe organization, women's rights organization, and also men's rights organization, or like Rana Padare and so on. Even they say what tinoshanda nemizvakare kuti information iende kuvanhu. Kuti izvi hazvisizvo zviri pamutemo. Kana taona kuti vanhu vanenge vakanganiswa kana kuti vanenge whose rights have been infringed, pane ma-processes anotorwa. There's a complaints handling desk in the Zimbabwe Gender Commission and also in the Human Rights Commission. So we encourage people to actually lodge complaints. Nekuti tinoda zvinhu zvine paperwork, zvine paper trail. Nekuti ma-complaints hafaniri kungogara ikoko, asi ma-complaints anofanira kuunzwa zvotsvagurudzwa kuitira kuti pakanyazoita research yakakwana vanhu ivavo vanenge vachizo the law will take its course.
All right, and thank you so much for that. And I feel like you're actually doing much. Because this issue is actually a difficult subject to tackle on, and because you're raising that awareness, it's very important for young girls out there to really understand what's happening in terms of their sexual reproductive health. And that brings me to an interesting question to you, Chido. What would you like to see addressed as a girl child in terms of this issue?
I think we continue with this route and we rally in more change champions, Wambota and a commissioner, because now that a viewer is watching this show, angasingazoti FGMchi, akuziya pamwe angatone shamwari yekuti aitakamuona, they'll be wondering, okay, but they can't ask. Now they have knowledge, akwanza kuvunza, is this and this what happened? Yes. And if they can then advocate or then take the necessary steps to bring awareness, it's more or less from an informed perspective. Maybe that might be the case or not. So I think we continue to take this route and we continue to rally in more young people, especially Vaskana and even Makomana. We talk about it, we do the necessary researches. They have a passion in even researching. But then because they feel a lot of things are already being researched on, here's a topic to research on. Yekuti already is under-researched. But the more we rally in my researchers and we have more information, you might find out kuti amongst my areas at all, but it's so underground. You'd never think kuti kuboera zvikutoitika kana kuti even muno muharare macho zvikutoitika. So we rally on more people to talk about it, more people to research on it, and we'll be on the right track.
And I'm so glad that we have ladies, especially discussing this issue. I'd like to understand that, do you think men have a part to play in addressing female genital mutilation? Because sometimes it's like, this is a case, but do you really think they have a role to play in addressing this issue?
Yes, I think so. Because actually, the Gender Commission is balanced. There are five women and 4 men. And I believe that men have a role to play. They are part of society. They are fathers, and their brothers and so on. So they have a part to play, and also that society gives them a bit more power. So when men talk about this and they actually talk against it, I think it complements the voice of women. So it's not a women issue, but it is a societal issue.
Okay, so I believe we need to take collaborative efforts in terms to eradicate this. And do you also think that maybe the civic organizations, because I think we do most of the talking and we're not doing much, do you think they're actually doing much in addressing this issue?
Well, I think the talking, the amplifying of the voice, yes, it is, and it needs to be more. But I think it should be evidence-based.
Evidence-based.
We need research so that when we're talking, we have figures. Because we need to actually say the percentage of girls and women who have suffered from FGM in Zimbabwe is so much. And this is the evidence. And then our advocacy then is based on evidence.
All right, so as we wrap up the show, I'd want to understand from you, Chido, there's a young girl that is looking at you and listening to you right now that would want to understand maybe your own point or position in terms of this subject. What would you want to say to that young girl that is looking up to you and also wanting to understand more in terms of this subject, maybe as your parting words?
It's normal to talk about it. I remember growing up, we never had these conversations with our parents. It was a taboo to even talk about sex. You'd be told, sex is equal to pregnancy, don't do it. Full stop, that was it. But because our generations are changing, we can talk about it from a 360-degree angle. I'm not just talking about sex and sexuality in terms of how you do it, use protection. I'm talking about FGM. I'm talking about certain angles of sex and sexuality that were hidden in some way. So it's normal to talk about it. And the more we talk about it, the more it's out there, and the more we are aimed at making sure that my rights as a young woman are not infringed in any way. So I think it's normal to talk about it, and let's have these conversations. Let's make sure that the word taboo is removed when we talk about sex and sexuality.
Beautiful. And just in short, because what would you like to say to the viewers in terms of this subject as your parting words as well?
Well, I would like to say that if you have experienced this, then you should know that honestly it's against your own rights. But as families, let's talk about it, and let's be more open, and also need to understand that culture is dynamic. We can always embrace other issues as well. But I think it's a discussion that we cannot end like in 20 minutes. I think we need to have another space where we can talk about it and also relate to other issues. Like, for example, the issues of changing sex, for example. What does that do to rights?
Okay. All right. And thank you so much, beautiful ladies, for joining me today on the Legal Talk Show. And yes, viewers, you're watching the Legal Talk Show, proudly brought to you by Say What, with support from the Swedish Embassy. Please do make sure to like, follow, and comment on our social media handles, and do get in touch with us on our toll-free number, which is 577 for psychosocial support, SRHR solutions, and child protection services. My name is The Dynamite, and I'm signing out.